Hey everybody, I'm joined now by Dan McDermott of thechartguys.com. Dan, welcome back.
Glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to see you. Dan, bit of a reversal in the trend as we speak today. I mean, there's been some positive sort of sector-wide catalysts with, let's see, we'll start with the Department of Justice's approval of the CanX Forefront merger, Aphria's reporting of a profitable fourth quarter. What is it that is turning your crank these days?
Well, it's definitely time to start paying attention to fundamentals. For so long, it's been hype driven and fundamentals go out the window when emotional cycles take over. But now we're at a point where everybody's paying attention to these Aphria earnings, and we're just hitting the high of the day right now. And that is key because we're not seeing a sell-off. We're not seeing a ton of profit taking from the big gap up open. Everybody in the Canadian side of things is responding to that. Cron's up 8%, CGC's up a bit. Still a very long way to go on those names. And they're going to have to prove themselves in the earnings that are coming up for them. But as someone who is always focused on the charts and technicals, definitely starting to pay attention to fundamentals a little bit, and we'll see if that's enough of a catalyst to shift the fear cycle that we've been in for so long.
Aha. And so from a technical perspective, do the indicators suggest that there might be a significant reversal of general emotional level in the marketplace?
We're looking for it because we know it's due, and we know the seasonality as we get towards the end of the summer and into the fall, and also towards the potential catalyst of the edibles in October and into December in Canada. So we're looking for it, but we remain skeptical of the bulls until they prove it to us. The burden of proof is on the bulls. And we've seen these little short-term pops, Hexo with one big green day, but no follow-through. And we have to see daily trend changes, which are marked by big bull moves, then a brief pullback, and then continuation. And it's that continuation that keeps pressure on the bears and the shorts, and it shows sustained buying pressure from the bulls that is so important, and that's been lacking in the sector big time.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the buzz around, so that we've got FDA has made some overtures to companies making excessive claims around CBD. The Department of Justice has started to look a little bit more aggressively into proposed mergers and mergers that are actually announced. Do you think that the return of optimism on the bull side is tempered by lingering skepticism on the bear side as a result of increasing government scrutiny?
That's definitely lingering, and also lingering, everybody's waiting, the next hammer to drop is this company going to screw up? Because we have, of course, CanTrust, and we have even HARV on the U.S. side of things, just facing, and even Curaleaf with its issue in its claims. It's a wave of bad news, and now that we have this Aphria good news, the question is, are we through the bad news? Can we start looking towards the positive? And again, it's just trend changes that I have to see. Even with this Aphria bull move today, 37%, I want to know what it does next week. I want to know once we top out and when we form a pullback and a healthy higher low, can we get that continuation? That is the most notable thing for me to show the sentiment shift.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's look at some charts now and tell me, visualize what you're describing there.
So let's talk trends, and we'll use an example for visualization of what bulls want to see happen, because we have a shining star in the marijuana sector, both in the US and the Canadian side of things, and it's Charlotte's Web. So Charlotte's Web has changed the daily trend, and now it has changed the weekly trend, and it's leaps and bounds ahead of anybody else in the USMJ sector, and even pretty much anybody in the Canadian side of things, for changing these trends. So everybody's looking at this chart and saying, this is what I want my chart to look like. So first things first, back in June, we had a very significant bounce that broke the lower highs of resistance, and a lower high is every time we see a bounce attempt, reject, and then drop to lower lows. That's as far as the bulls can make it before they exhaust their buying power and the bears step in and push the price back down. So in this instance, we saw a solid bounce, almost a 40% bounce, and the most notable thing for me, as I was talking about, is the higher low and then higher high. So again, just to visualize, we have the low of the dump, high of the first bounce, there's our higher low. That's as far as the bears could push it before the bulls said, nope, we're done, and we're heading to higher highs. And as soon as we break 2070, that is the daily trend change. Other little important notes, the bear volume was declining, showing the bears running out of momentum, and then the bull volume was increasing on the way back up. That's textbook what you want to see as a bull for a change in momentum. Not only that, after changing the daily trend, we then saw a weekly trend change. So the weekly trend change is the exact same thing. We have the low of the pullback, the high of the first bounce, huge gains, and that's great, but we have to see follow through. There's our pullback. This is the level where the bulls said, nope, we're not going any lower. That's as far as we're going, and now we're going to start buying again. There's our higher low, and now our higher high, and CWeb is on fire. We're up almost 100% in the last 2 months of trading, and all-time highs are back in sight. And you're not going to find many USMJ names at all that you can say all-time highs are in the picture at this point. So there's a number of reasons, both news-wise and fundamentals, but clearly standing out. So every name needs to see that happen. We look at a chart like CGC on the daily time frame. Again, every single bounce is just a lower high. Here's the last clear trend change attempt for the CGC bulls. We had the low, high of the bounce. Here's the pullback. There's where the bulls say, nope, we're not going any lower. Time to head back up to resistance. We failed to break resistance, and then we broke support. That told us it was a failed trend change attempt because we could not break that level, and then the bears have run with it ever since. So for the trend change to take place the same way on Canopy as it has happened on CWeb, a lot has to play out. We have to see a bounce on the daily where we top out, a higher low and a higher high changing the daily trend. And then not only that, that's just step number one. From there, we have to see it happen on the weekly time frame with a higher low and a higher high as well. So it would have to be something like that. That's not going to happen anytime soon. For that to develop, for CWeb, it took 2 months for that to develop. So CGC, considering we just hit the low of the pullback yesterday, we could say best case, perhaps 2 months it would take for the bulls to change the weekly trend and notably shift that momentum. So what I'm looking for in the US marijuana space, as so many names are very beat up, is daily trend changes. That's just step number one to get my interest for a shift in momentum, and so many names are struggling to do so still. Looking at APHA, so here's that huge gap up open and our nice strong day today. But again, what I am more interested in is once we top out, wherever that is, what does consolidation look like? What does the volume behind that consolidation look like? And then do the bulls buy and see that continuation move to confirm the daily trend change? This 1 day move is great, but it's not enough for us to be looking at consistent follow through and momentum shift. The bulls have a great chance of changing the daily trend from here with such a clear sentiment shift, but we still have to be skeptical until it happens. So it's all about the shift in momentum, because again, psychologically, what that does is it puts continued pressure on bears. Anybody that enters bearish on that little daily higher low, once we see higher highs, they are now underwater, and it's their short covering that helps push the move higher. And of course, it also shows us sustained bull buying pressure, and smart bulls who are not interested in chasing wait for the daily higher low to load. And if that loading is significant, that's when we see that continuation move. So APHA into next week, whether it changes the daily trend or not will be notable. Dip buying is going to be very key for these bulls to get us believing that the sentiment shift has gone underway. But keeping in mind that the wind behind the sails for the sector today, based on APHA's earnings, could get sucked out, depending on CGC and Cron's earnings, which are coming up in the next couple of weeks. If we start to see surprise beat by surprise beat, that's definitely going to mark the bottom of the summer lulls and our sentiment shift taking place. But we still have to wait to see what the fundamental reaction is to these upcoming earnings.
All right, Dan, that's great insight as usual. Thank you very much for joining us again today. We'll talk to you soon.
See you next time.